Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a virtual road trip. This is part 2 of our little trek to Cooperstown. And, well, I gotta be honest with you, I kind of fibbed a little bit. Our final destination, I should say, is not actually Cooperstown proper, although we will go through there. It's actually a little north of there, on Lake Otsego. We're going to a park on the northern end of the lake. But you'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. Anyway, we just got off of the interstate. We're still on, believe it or not, Route 28, and we'll be on it for a while longer as we go here. We're going to start hitting some rural areas again as we leave Oneonta, but we'll hit a few more towns as well. We're beginning to enter a different region of New York State than the one that we're typically traveling in. This is the more central part of the state. And basically, as we leave the Catskill Mountains, the terrain, although somewhat similar with the rolling hills and valleys, begins to widen out much more, wider valleys, just more of a rolling terrain. And that's only going to get more so as we get further north here and get to and past Cooperstown. A lot of farming out here, as you can see. This area is great for it. If we kept going further west, we'd eventually hit the Finger Lakes of New York, and one day I hope to get out there for a road trip. That's a trip, though. That's out there a ways from me. But anyway, it's basically going to be like this the rest of the way. These wide open views for the most part. So enjoy. So as I promised in part 1, going to get into a bit of the history of Cooperstown and this entire region of New York State a bit here. Cooperstown itself was founded by an early settler of this area named William Cooper. William Cooper was the father of the famed author James Fenimore Cooper, who wrote the Leatherstocking Tales, which included The Last of the Mohicans. So this area of New York, Cooperstown itself, became quite famous through that well before baseball was even around. As for baseball, though, of course, Cooperstown is home of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Interesting story, though, how this small little town in upstate New York became the mecca of baseball and what baseball's true beginnings really are. I highly recommend that you watch the Ken Burns documentary, Baseball, for the real detailed synopsis of this, but I'm going to go over it briefly. So, as the story goes, a man named Abner Doubleday, who was a general for the Union Army in the Civil War, supposedly invented the game of baseball in a field outside Cooperstown, New York in 1839. That's the story that's been told for since as long as I can remember, and much, much before that, since the early 20th century. The truth is that baseball was never invented anywhere near Cooperstown. Well, that's not totally true. It was invented in the same state, you might say. But the real beginnings of baseball come from a very much more gradual development from sports that predated it, like rounders and games called town ball. Every city in the country had a different version of this type of game with different rules, but the actual real rules of baseball, the original rules of baseball, were created in 1845 in New York City, in Manhattan. And the first baseball game, at least recognized by the Hall of Fame and baseball itself, was played in Hoboken, New Jersey, if I remember correctly, of all places. So, how did Cooperstown then get the Hall of Fame? Well, that's another interesting story. There was, in the very early 20th century, I believe 1908, 1905, very early in the 20th century, there was a commission that baseball brought together called the Mills Commission. And basically their responsibility was to learn and find the origins of baseball because it was very unclear, as it kind of still is today. And their conclusion after talking to, at that point, a very elderly man in the Cooperstown area, as we pass, right here we're actually going to pass the brand new baseball fields that they built just outside the town that bring thousands of people here to this area. Anyway, they basically talked to this guy. He gave them the Abner Doubleday story, and for some reason they just went with it. Probably because they just wanted to have a story that sounded good. Abner Doubleday himself was never recorded ever talking about baseball. He died not too long after the Civil War, so he wasn't around to question. And the true origins of baseball are still kind of, mysterious in a way. But anyway, like I said, watch the documentary, and that's going to be my spiel on this. Let's get back to the scenery. Sure hope I don't upset any of the locals around here, if they ever watch this video, now that I've spilled their little secret. But hey, this will always be the home of baseball now. That ain't changing. We're going to be entering the village itself here. The actual village of Cooperstown is a very beautiful town on its own. It's located on the southern end of Lake Otsego, which I mentioned a little bit in the part 1. Lake Otsego is not really part of the Finger Lakes, but some consider it an offshoot of the Finger Lakes to the east. But what is important about Lake Otsego is it is the official source of the Susquehanna River, which is a major river in the northeast and empties out all the way down in Chesapeake Bay. Now, unfortunately, I decided to make this trek up here on the busiest day of the entire summer. It was a Hall of Fame induction day, I believe. Mike Piazza and Ken Griffey Jr. were inducted. So I didn't actually get a chance to drive past the Hall of Fame, but in case you want to see what it looks like, here's a picture of what it looks like in the front. If I ever come back up here during a less busy season, I'll definitely try to get an actual video of it. But it's basically just that building and a few other buildings. So there you go. So now we're leaving the village itself, and we're finally off of Route 28, believe it or not. And we are now on, as you can see, Route 80, heading north. We're going to be basically traveling up the western side of Lake Otsego, and we'll get some views of the lake as we go up. And we'll be taking this road all the way to the other end of the lake at US Route 20. Just some quick facts on the lake here. It's roughly about 8 miles long in total. It gets pretty deep. I think about 160 feet deep at its deepest point. We're actually going to be heading to the other side of the lake. Once we get up to the northern end, we'll be driving a little east and then back down the eastern side to get to what's known as Hyde Bay, which is this little short arm off the main structure of the lake. The lake, like most of the lakes of upstate New York, is very elongated, and we're going to be heading to the other side. But it's a beautiful, beautiful lake, beautiful area, and we're going to get some good views of it here. Here's another little tidbit for all you road nerds out there. This is, as you can see, US Route 20, and Route 20 is the longest road in America. It stretches from Boston, Massachusetts all the way to the Pacific Ocean in Oregon. And we're on it right now. If we kept heading east, we'd eventually end up in Albany, New York. And if we turned around and went west, eventually, a long time from now, we'd get to Buffalo, New York. And, oh look, there's an Amish person. I forgot, there's Amish people in central New York, much like Pennsylvania and Ohio, this entire area. Anyway, hopefully we'll get a little further out into western New York one of these days, but for now, we're just going to be heading a little east and then south. Now that we're further north, the terrain has fully changed to the rolling hills of central New York. This is not the Catskill Mountains anymore, that's for sure. The western boundary of the Catskills is sometimes, depending on who you ask, but once you're this far up, you're definitely in a totally different region altogether. And it's really beautiful up here. Pretty soon we're going to be getting to our final destination, which is Glimmerglass State Park, and that's going to end our road trip today. Well, except for the fact I got a long drive home, but that part's not as exciting. Anyway, thanks for watching. As always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the usual. Share this video as much as you can if you like it. And yeah, make sure to check back. I'll be hopefully putting up some new videos real soon, within the next week or two. Probably going to do some more local stuff. And yeah, I'll try to get out there as much as I can. Well, until then, you know the drill. Sit back, enjoy the ride. See you next time. Oh, one last thing. I'm going to end this video with a nice panorama shot of our final destination on the beach of Otsego Lake. Enjoy.